Yeah, I don't know. I can't watch new movies anymore. I wish I could say because crime doesn't look cool and crime doesn't pay, but it does. And I wish I could say it's because the lever of race relations took a dive after Obama promised to fix them, because he didn't. I wish it was because Spike Lee ruined the genre of inner city slice of life movies, because he did. But that's not it. Few movies are perfect. There's Black Dynamite, there's New Jack City, King of New York, The Brave Little Toaster. Even fewer movies were able to pull it off with a $3 million budget. This one was directed by Hype Williams, and yes, the man's name is Hype. And it is Hype. It made $10 million, tripling its take. It's a low-budget movie, and it executed with an abundance of style, with a faint whiff of substance, and it's awesome. And a movie like this will never come back. And it's not that they don't want to make it anymore, it's that they don't know how. We have lost technology. We've lost the economics. See, back in the late 90s, you could make a movie with a small budget. Everybody went to the movie theaters because there was nothing else you could do. There was no internet. There was no Tinder. There's no logging into things. At best, you could get onto like a bulletin board or MSN Messenger and maybe ask somebody ASL. So a movie could run in a few major cities and make back what it cost to make, and then they would sell DVDs and syndication. It was a simple business model, and it worked well. But now, since Netflix plays, for a few pennies a view, and theaters cost too much to run anything but the Minecraft movie in all 12 fucking theaters, it makes no sense to make an R-rated blaxploitation Forrest Gump movie that'll kill it on the back end, because there's no more back end. So what's Belly? Belly is Forrest Gump for black dudes. I don't know how else to describe it. Belly is a vignette of every trope that the African American community in the States has had for like the last century. And above that layer, it's about two men, Tommy and Sincere. Sort of the Cain and Abel, but not really. Sort of like a saint and sinner, but not really. Maybe it was a family man and a player, but not really. Like, think of it as having two protagonists in the movie, which I love, because you don't see that very much, except for in buddy cop movies. And even then, one cop is clearly the protagonist. And it's awesome. And since Hype only did music videos before this, he took that same style to film. He does something that I've critiqued before, and that's where movies make the villains look so cool that you relate to them, which is kind of missing the point. The difference here is he made protagonists from the villains. You get to suspend disbelief. You get to believe your morals at the door and just live like the true criminals for a while. All right, pause. I hate, and I mean I hate, YouTube movie reviews. I hate theater kids. I hate communist commie kids. I hate the I hate my dad kids. I hate the I got my philosophy degree kids. I hate kids who love the box set and the special editions and they don't even unwrap the movie and they complain about CD run. And none of them do that here. I don't care if you like this movie or not. At this point, it completely bypassed every pretentious asshole on YouTube. It's a breath of fresh air. It's a sniff of Febreze. Progressive types can't talk about the inner city, whatever, soft bigotry of low expectations. I get it. Because they got privilege or something. And so they leave this one alone and they save their communist babble for some white guy movie because fuck you, Dad. And the nerds don't bother with this one because there's nothing to hate about this movie. I mean, they could talk about style over substance. They can talk about how movies that were cheaply executed because it feels better to not have a sincere enjoyment of anything. Plus, I don't think they come out with a specialized edition or any CGI for this one. So there's really no DMX Funko Pops to collect. So they're not going to talk about it. What they do have on this movie, though, is a bunch of small YouTube channels from a niche I wouldn't have expected. It's like Hood Cinema Review. I mean, they just explain the plot, but it's something.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the f*** is that? What is that?
people for fun. I murder people for fun. Come on! Medium bump up that bump up that thing. Bump up that letter.
Do you like real gangsters? Do you like Rough Riders? Do you like Jamaican Scarface? 90s Malcolm X or Forrest Gump? Well, I have the movie for you. Simple stories, told well, shown with panache. In a world where young black men think the American dream is a nightmare and the evils of the crack epidemic destroyed a nation, two men give a series of vignettes into the African American experience. Life is like a box of chocolates. No, life is like a blunt dog. Know what I'm saying? From the director that brought you just about every cool-ass gangsta music video from the 1990s comes a film where they took every trope that brothers grew up with and mashed it together into a 90-minute music video. It's got everything: violence, revenge, crime, redemption, sex, gratuitous nudity for no reason other than it's awesome.
What the f? Boom!
And a vessel to propel DMX to stardom. Hype Williams took the torch from Spike Lee and actually made it worth a damn. This movie is all things, from growing in the projects to robbing nightclubs for the dollar, to being a drug kingpin, to a fugitive of the law, to the Brothers of Islam, to returning to the motherland. It's hype, from hype, and I'm hyped. It's Belly, 1998.
General, the boy Lennox beat down so you know. Who? Lennox. Yo, my boy named Lennox and forget that. So me have to jump off and back. Start check it or something.
Now, with the characters, this is where this movie shines. More so than the plot, especially the plot. Like, there's a cast of characters and they run the gamut. They hit hard, they move fast, they're in and they're out. There's Tommy, played by DMX. Think of, like, Tate. Think of any kind of, like, thug, bad thing, Tupac, whatever. Sociopath, he's a criminal, he's a nihilist. He doesn't care about anything but money. Cheats on his girl with an underage chick, he betrays his friends. He's truly a despicable person. But he has skills and he has confidence, and that gets him out ahead. And after a series of tragic situations from the consequences of his own actions, he slowly devolves into a criminal who's set to spend the rest of his life in prison, where he finds redemption with God, but it'll probably cost him his life. Then there's Sincere, the other protagonist. That's Nas. He's a family man who does crime to pay for his family. He and his wife are grounded, they're middle class, and they want to leave the life behind, but no matter how far they get, it keeps following them. So eventually it ends up with him getting shot, his wife harassed by the same criminals, so they decide to flee to Africa and find their peace. You're going to notice that they're very on the nose with the character names in this one. Like, Sincere is, well, sincere. And you have Keisha, the love interest for DMX. That's Terrell Hicks, Tommy's girl. She's loyal to a fault. She's gorgeous, but she's insecure. She's terrified of being alone. She loves the bad boy. She doesn't really have an arc, but she ends up in prison and almost killed because of her relationship with him. She ends up shooting somebody that gets sent to assassinate her to get back at Tommy. Tionne Watkins, and she plays herself apparently, same name. She's the moral grounding for Sincere. She's the woman that encourages him to do better for his family, to leave crime behind. She eventually approves of his trip to Africa. She's essentially the Jiminy Cricket on his shoulder. And then you got Knowledge, who's Oliver Grant. He's part of Tommy's original crew, and when they expand their criminal enterprise from robbing to drugs, some jealous gangsters in a different city snitch to the feds. Knowledge is arrested, abandoned by Tommy and the gang. So from behind the scenes, he sends a series of assassins, and his role is that of the ghetto. Like, it never leaves the guys alone, they can never be free, it always wants violence for the sake of violence. Then you got Lennox, who's Lucy Rankin. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, because you cannot make a blaxploitation film without a Scarface. He is a Jamaican gangster. He is da big time yan. He serves as a way to compress the character arc for Tommy, going from small time hood robbing places to the top of the criminal underworld and back, because they have another 4 movies to finish before this one wraps up. The rest of the characters, I mean, all the characters really are small parts. Like I said, it's a series of vignettes with, same as Forrest Gump had, right? Like, oh, this happened, and this happened, and this happened. It's like Martin Luther King. You get it. And it's one of the things you have to do when you're working like this is you have to really quickly make the characters instantly understandable. Hence why you named a Reverend Dr. Savior. Like, they're not deep, and they don't have to be. Finally, you got Shamik, who's Method Man. He's one of the assassins that Knowledge sends out. In reality, it's a chance for Method Man to be in a movie. When you need somebody killed, you must get the Wu-Tang. Then you got Reverend Savior, who's Ben Chase. Sincere talks about books about the Reverend throughout the movie, and near the end, Tommy is told by what looks like a mishmash between a Jewish Illuminati and a U.S. government agency spook that if he wants his freedom, he has to assassinate the Reverend. But the power of the Lord converts Tommy, so he represents the spirituality in Black America and is kind of like a surrogate for MLK and Martin Luther King and all of the civil rights leaders that were assassinated in the 60s. The next 2 are Mark, who's Hassan Johnson, and Wise, who's Lakeed Stan. Yeah, these guys are like Tommy's younger crew. They're just the kids. He's grooming them for crime later in life. Tommy eventually gets them killed, though, because he can't help but create the worst outcome for those around him. They're symbols of how criminal culture is raising the next generation to be worse off for it. So it's a lot of characters, and I've skipped a whole bunch of them, like the guys in Oklahoma City, some of the cops, all that stuff. None of them have an arc, but it's not really a character study. It's more like I said, it's a series of vignettes. It's basically Forrest Gump for Black guys. Reverend Savior is a brief introduction to MLK and Malcolm X and their assassinations. The First Crimes are a brief introduction to inner city crime. The Drug Deals with Lennox is a brief introduction to the crack epidemic of the 80s. I find it interesting as hell in that way. Like, it's a story that tells 10 stories with characters who serve as set pieces to go from one element to the next, while the director does his best to make everything look as fucking cool as he can. It's almost like part Gulliver's Travels, too, in that way. Anyways, it's a novel storytelling technique, and it breaks a lot of rules of storytelling, but it just kind of works in its own way. The one thing I'll say, the one thing that's negative about it, which kept it from being the greatest blaxploitation movie of the 90s, is its impermanence. Scarface has the most memorable scenes, has the most memorable lines, it has some of the most memorable characters. So did Kings of New York. So did New Jack City. Belly's only problem, and its only problem, is that while it polished the genre to a fine shine, it made things sound a little too much like the actual ghetto and not enough like a movie. And while I know this is a huge exercise in suspension of disbelief, it portrayed itself too much with naturalism or being what you see, as opposed to realism, which is being what you know. And I know that sounds confusing, and it's a movie. A good way to think about it is saying the camera outs 20 pounds to you. You know that saying? Well, this movie was like the camera that tried not to out 20 pounds to you, but those 20 pounds are the memorable parts. In other words, it was too real, dog. So with the setups and payoffs, they really only do a little bit of foreshadowing to keep the plot from falling apart. Like early on, Tommy gets a tip from Knowledge that one of his crew was talking shit. So he made him strip under gunpoint and embarrassed him in front of everybody. Now that guy, near the end, tries to kill Sincere over that same disrespect, which gives him the courage to flee to Africa. It's not much, but it works. And later on, Sincere talks early on about the Reverend giving him awareness and that there's more to life than just money. Tommy belittles him at first, saying what else is there? But then near the end of the movie, when the Illuminati dude tasks him with assassinating the Reverend, he takes him up on the offer because who cares about books? You know, of course, once Tommy actually studies the good word, he's swayed to the side of good. So it gives you like an understanding of things to come. And they're not the most clever elements of foreshadowing, but you know what? They tie the story together. They do it in a nice, subtle way that you might not notice on your first viewing. It's what keeps it from turning into just like a series of YouTube shorts, you know? The plot. All right. Oh, look, I like this movie, and I think it executes well, but I really want it here for the one negative that I've been talking about, and I think that's what held it back from being a classic. It's like a White Claw. You know, it says what the can is, the flavor on the can, but it tastes like somebody describing the flavor in a different room. It took on the entirety of the Black American fable, just like Forrest Gump did for like the baby boomers. And just like Forrest Gump, you realize it hollowed out each of those stories in order to fit them into a 90-minute thing. Kind of takes away, it hollows it out. So my takeaway, and hopefully yours, is that if you're going to be ambitious like this, you either need to be ruthlessly efficient in every element of your story, or you need to extend that runtime, or else you're going to ultimately have a shallow husk of a story. And you better make it look damn cool, or you can lose the audience. So Belly, ambitious story, shallowly told, wonderfully executed. And I think it's a great movie, even though you've probably felt the same, but you just couldn't place it in words. Like, you like this movie, so why is it you can't remember a single line of dialogue from it? It's a cautionary tale. Anyways, I don't think I can spoil this. In fact, there's so much, I have to go pretty fast just to get through it in a decent time. So whenever I'm explaining something, picture cool music in the background and the entire movie itself acting like a leitmotif to black culture. It starts with Tommy and Sincere robbing a nightclub. They go back to Tommy's place. They have a lot of exposition, establish the characters. You know, Mark is stupid and impulsive. Tommy's a sociopath and a nihilist, sleeping with an underage girl and a girlfriend. Sincere is a family man and wants out of the life. Keisha's insecure and tired of being alone. Tion is a mom and she wants to be safe for her kids. And then an MTV News thing comes up, and yeah, that was a thing in the late 90s. And apparently there's some new drug on the streets. And Tommy wants money, so he hooks up with this Jamaican dude called Lennox, who he says owes him a favor, but he will hook him up. Now, Sincere doesn't want in the drug game, so he bounces. And then they all end up going to Oklahoma City, I think it is, and they run some drugs to make cash, which pisses off the locals. They're drug dealers, so they call the cops, rat them out. Knowledge is arrested, Mark is arrested and shot, while Lennox calls in the favor to have Tommy assassinate his competition in Jamaica, who, I'm not going to lie, out of all the characters in this one, this is the guy that looks the coolest. I don't know, that chicken feather mohawk, just raw, it slaps. Anyway, so Mark calls everybody else on the phone, but it's tapped, so Tommy has to run and everybody else gets busted. He gets the two kids he was grooming, you know, to help him sell drugs, while Knowledge is trying to kill everybody who isn't helping him get out of the slammer, as well as that guy in Oklahoma who ratted him out. There's a cool scene there where Method Man gets drugged up and then tries to take him out. And it all plays out in a series of small scenes that show all of the characters interacting together. Like, I don't want to play out the second half here beat for beat, but most of the parts of these are everybody acting impulsive without regard for the future, screwing their lives up for the pettiest of beefs. Most end up dead. Tommy's one kid kills the other kid. He ends up giving up, getting arrested. And then the movie switches to another movie. And that's where the Man in the Shadows hires Tommy to kill the Reverend because he has knowledge that will save the black community or something. Like, they kind of hint at it's being bad, but they never really say what the issue is. But it's hard to get in there, so Tommy has to legit become a convert. But the convert actually sways him. So he and Sincere meet up near the end, share their experiences and different life paths. Sincere's talking about going to Africa. They wish each other well, and then Tommy goes to what he assumes is his like dying move. The Reverend gives a speech to him, which is technically exposition to the audience, and then Tommy has to make a choice. He chose his peace, he chose redemption, and then the movie ends. So yeah, we had a brief period in like the 70s and the 80s and the 90s where people were mashing up genres and polishing genres. Music video directors were getting film roles, and it was a whole bunch of new movies that reinvigorated Hollywood. The late 90s really were like a golden age. This was a blaxploitation movie mashed up with Forrest Gump, mashed up with Gulliver's Travels, with a little bit of like everything in the kitchen sink thrown in, and it was awesome. The music was banging. The scenes, everything was made to look as cool as possible. It kind of distracted you from how quickly they had to move through the plot. And it's just, I don't know, man. I love it. And there's no way you don't love it. And I'm not talking in the ironic way that people watch The Room or Mystery Science Theater 3000 where everybody just laughs at bad old movies. I mean, sincerely love it. In the same way that you have comic books creating wonderful stories in a world that also has sophisticated novels, fun-packed indie games in a world that has billion-dollar AAA consumer product slop, you can have a mid-budget, blaxploitation Forrest Gump knockoff mashed up with Gulliver's Travels, and it keeps you engaged with the tricks and the tactics of storytelling that have entertained people since before the written word. So enjoy it, because I damn well did. Cheers, fellas.
Jenna, the boy learns to become so, you know. Oof, Lennox. Yo, Mr. Boy, Lennox is to get up, to jump off and back. With all the chiquitas in there.